Others quickly followed McGahee to the unsettled territory. Among the early settlers in the San Marcos area were William W. Moon, Dr. Eli Merriman, and Mike Sessom, all of whom had served in John C. Jack Hayes' Texas Ranger Company. Under the command of Captain He McCulloch, they had camped near San Marcos in the 1840s and were no doubt drawn back to the area's reliable springs and agricultural possibilities. William W. Moon was the first Anglo to settle near the San Marcos Springs, where he opened a hotel on the stagecoach line between Austin and San Antonio. General Edward Burleson and others settled on the San Marcos and Blanco rivers near the San Marcos Springs in the mid-1840s as well, through 1879 to 668. There, Burleson established a mill and Captain Earhart opened the first store and post office by 1847, Tyler et al. 1996 for 868. San Marcos grew slowly at first. William McClintock passed through the village in September 1847. In his journal, McClintock referred to the place as St. Mark's, an Anglo name that did not tick. He reported that the village consisted of 4 houses, all constructed in the last month, adding that only a few months previously it had been a favorite camping ground of the Comanche McClintock 1930-3233. In 1847, shortly after General Burleson settled on his land, he sold about 1,500 acres of his grant to John D. Pitts, an official under-state governor would. Pitts returned to his home state of Georgia to recruit settlers for his land, which lay a few miles west of the as-yet unplatted town of San Marcos. Pitts led a lengthy wagon caravan of his 4 neighbors, along with his own family and slaves, to what became known as Stringtown, a settlement strung out along the San Antonio Road, Dobby, 1932-27. The settlers brought all of their livestock, chickens, turkeys, sheep, horses, mules, oxen, and cows necessary to introduce the type of crop cultivation they practiced in Georgia in homes in Hayes County. Its Stringtown endeavor was the first organized colonization effort by Americans in Hayes County, and it attracted many new settlers in the next few years. More typical of settlement patterns in Hayes County were the unplanned communities that attracted family groups. By virtue of natural resources, the most important of which was water, followed by abundant wood for building and heat, and game for food and clothing. For these reasons, some of the earliest settlement in Hayes County occurred in the hill country along the Blanco River and near the headwaters of the Onion, Bear, and Slaughter Creeks. Wimberley on the Blanco River, about 14 miles northwest of San Marcos and Mountain City, a few miles north of present Kyle, and about 1.5 miles west of present Buda fall into this category. William Winters was one of the first known settlers on the Blanco River in what is now Wimberley in 1848. He soon built a sawmill and gristmill that became the economic basis for the community that grew up around them. His 2-room limestone hall and parlor house, built about 1856, is the community's oldest surviving building and one of the earliest stone dwellings in Hayes County. Mountain City developed on the stagecoach road from Austin to San Antonio. Despite its impressive name, it was not on a mountain and was never a city. The sprawling rural settlement stretched from the Kyle Bluff on the Blanco River to Manchaca Springs, just over the Travis County line. Simon and Johnson and Stovall et al. 1986 to 205. One of the first settlers in the area was Philip Allen, who came to Texas with his wife, Jane Walker, in 1834. Allen brought his family from Bastrop to what has since been called Allen's Prairie in 1847, 1930-28. John Wheeler Bunton was another early arrival, as were James and Mary Ann Stevenson. Ira and Patience Breedlove were early Mountain City residents who ran a cotton gin powered by mules. In the 2 years since McGahee led the way, settlers had poured into the region, establishing dozens of communities in the former wilderness and prompting the creation of a new county. In 1848, following the conclusion of the Mexican War, Hayes County was created, Fyone part of Travis County, and named for Texas Ranger John Coffee Hayes. A stage line known as Tarbox and Brown began operating in the spring of 1848 between San Antonio and Austin on the road that Lamar had ordered, built in 1840, West Texas Free Press, August 14th, 1874. 3 times each week, the state left Boston in the evening. If all went well, it would arrive in San Antonio 18 hours later. Along the way, the stage made stops at Manchaca Springs, San Marcos, Stringtown, New Braunfels, Hillsborough, and finally in San Antonio de Cordova, 1858 to 195. Despite its new status, Hays County remained largely wilderness, more in the manner of frontiersmen than seasoned farmers. The area's pioneers depended on its natural sustenance. Early settlers relied on the area's plentiful game, including deer, wild turkey, wild hogs, and javelina for most of their food, and augmented their diets with Calm Dobby 1932-14. They likely erected corn cribs, smokehouses, and rudimentary shelters for horses and milch cows soon after establishing their home sites. The 1850 census was the first taken after the formation of the county. Hays County counted about 400 residents, nearly a third of whom were slaves. Most of the settlers came from Georgia, the Carolinas, Tennessee, and Arkansas. Like most Southerners, the newcomers were Democrats, slave owners, and farmers. 10 years later, the population had increased to 1,200 with the same percentage of slaves. The earliest Anglo-settlers engaged primarily in a subsistence-level agricultural economy. Even within settlements such as San Marcos, most people maintained gardens and at least partially supported themselves through agriculture. The earliest mercantile stores catered to farmers and a small company of ranger stationed near San Marcos. Industries such as ginning and grist mill operations were based on the small-scale farming activities that employed the majority of the county's residents. During the 1850s, ad hoc agricultural settlements continued to spring up throughout the rural countryside. In 1850, Major Ezekiel Nance and his family moved from Arkansas to the Blanco River near Mountain City, about 3 miles west of the present town of Kyle. Within a few years, a sizable settlement known as the Blanco community grew up around the Nance homestead. Nance erected a small log house to serve as a community church and school, Dobby 1932-30. Live Oak Academy and Cumberland Presbyterian Church opened in 1855. Colonel W.W. Hopt arrived in 1857, Carpenter 197-1722. His place later became the center of the Blanco community, where he built a beautiful chapel of limestone and cypress in 1865. The building served as a church and school until the 1880s. Simon and Johnson in Stovall, 1986-297. About 1856, the Wanslow and Massey families settled the Catlin community in the northern part of the county. John Day owned a ranch in the Mountain Sea area where he first raised sheep by the 1850s. Native Americans developed a taste for mutton and he lost a lot of his stock to theft. Thomas Harrison boarded on the Day Ranch. He married Elizabeth Fielder and bought land on Allen's Prairie in 1866, where he built a log cabin, Cooper 197069. Jesse Day moved to Mountain City in 1851, Paget 1953 to 348 after being recorded in the 1850 census in San Antonio, U.S. Census Bureau 1850. Jesse had 7 sons, and they were sometimes called the Week Brothers, as in 7 days in a week. After Jesse drowned on a cattle drive trying to cross the Brazos River at Waco in 1860, his son Perry took over operations at the Ranch Hunter 1925 to 1004. Dripping Springs was first set in 1853 by the families of William Fawcett, Dr. Joseph Pound, John L. Moss, and Robert L. Wallace Storman Stovall et al. 1986 to 435. Dripping Springs lies between Little Barton Creek and Onion Creek in the northwest corner of the county. The springs for which the settlement was named issue from Glen Rose limestone of the Edwards Trinity Plateau Aquifer Brune 1975 to 44. Indian raids were a serious problem in the first 2 decades of the Dripping Springs existence. As late as 1859, for instance, 2 young boys, Clinton and Jeff Smith, were stolen from an area ranch by a band of about 25 Comanches and Lipan Apaches. They spent years in captivity. Smith 1927-2830. One of the more ambitious endeavors of this period was the establishment of the Johnson Institute near Dripping Springs in 1852. At first, classes were held in a log cabin. Thomas Johnson and his wife wife, Catherine Hydehart, were dedicated to educating young men in a rural atmosphere away from the temptations of the area's towns, and they opened their school with 50 students. During the years 1867 and 1868, a two-story, 10-room building was erected on the site. The school was closed in 1872. In 1947, it was purchased by Walter Prescott Webb and his wife Jane, who restored it and used it as riders' retreat with the name Friday Mountain Ranch in an idyllic setting. The site later became Friday Mountain Boys Ranch Storm and Johnson et al. 1986, 46768, and in the 1980s, a Hindu religious center. The Manjica settlement was on the Hayes-Travis County line, and later it came to be considered as part of Mountain City. Adolphus Weir, who bought 500 acres there in 1852, settled the land around by the Lanchacta Springs in 1852. He built an impressive house above the springs where giant live oak trees had about 50 slaves, whom he brought with him from Columbus, Mississippi. Although the springs are known as Manjica, the post office said whose place was spelled Manchac, which is how Manjica is pronounced locally. About 1858, William Cannon platted Cannonville and established a postal station on his head right, which spanned northern Hayes and southern Travis.